Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of the Independent Learning Podcast. Um, what's up, dudes? I know at least one or two people are listening to this. So what's up? How's it going? Let me know how this one is. I think it's gonna be a good one. It's a nice little what's that called? A biography on someone's life. I'm testing the waters here, seeing what types of things I like book reviews, maybe history, shit like that. Trying to think, I don't got much to say. Didn't do anything this week. Slept a whole lot. Watched a whole bunch of fucking scary stories on YouTube. That fucked me up. I was back in like fucking first grade or whatever after I watched Gremlins sleeping under the covers with no AC. I was fucking sweating my ass off hiding from the fucking skinwalkers, dude. But yeah, had nothing else to say about this week. It was a nice good one. Did some math homework. Sat through a bunch of boring fucking lectures. Um, but yeah, I think I'm just gonna get into it this week. So this week's topic is John C. Lilly. The title is either gonna be the original Joe Rogan or they did what to a dolphin. Those are the two title names I'm working with right now. I might do both because I'm indecisive like that, but I think those are both good episodes that kind of encapsulate this story, this man's story. Okay, so John C. Lilly. I'm just going to start from the beginning of his life. Born January 6, 1915, in St. Paul, Minnesota. What? I'm in Minnesota right now, in case anyone is somehow listening to this and doesn't know that, but probably not. His mother's family owned stockyards, and his father was a banker. So he came from a very rich family, and they would go on to fund his various scientific endeavors. In this week's notes, there's no like drawings or anything. I'm still gonna upload them, but it's just a bunch of words. There's no. Maybe I could have made a couple drawings, but I don't know. It didn't feel like it needed them. So he was always interested in science from a very young age. Um, he experimented in his basement with chemistry sets and stuff. And when he was like 13 or 14, people started calling him Einstein Jr., which might have been an insult. Maybe they were calling him a fucking nerd. Might have been calling him smart. I don't know. But this was back in the day, so who knows? When he was 14, he enrolled in St. Paul Academy, which was a preparatory school, and his teachers encouraged his love of science, specifically chemistry, and allowed him to use the school laboratory after hours. So he must have been pretty smart for them to do all that, but it was also like what, like 1930, so the rules weren't too tight on anyone about anything. They were like, people were drinking morphine back then, sipping codeine. So I don't know how special he was, but maybe. While in high school, he became interested in philosophy, specifically subjective idealism. And I had no idea what that is. Maybe I know the two people listening to this don't. Um, so I wrote down a definition here. The idea that nothing exists besides minds, spirits, and their perceptions. That's from Britannica. Material things are mere perceptions. And I viewed it as like something only exists if there's something there to see it exist. But that's not really correct. Maybe. I wrote, as an example, if a tree falls in the woods and no one's there to hear it, did it even make a sound? Right? Because it's like if nothing was there to perceive it, then does it even exist? You know what I mean? I'm gonna pull up a quote from John C. Lilly. That was his mantra, because that might better explain or maxim, not mantra. In the province of the mind, what one believes to be true either is true or becomes true within certain limits. These limits are to be found experimentally and experientially. When so found, these limits turn out to be further beliefs to be transcended. In the province of the mind, there are no limits. And that's from Programming and Metaprogramming in the Human Biocomputer. Which, if you could take anything from this title, it's that this was another bad fucking topic to pick for the first 2 episodes. This shit is really like complicated and has a bunch of like new ideas that are almost like specifically his. So, but I don't really go too deep into them. This is more about what he did to those goddamn dolphins, dude. What he did to them. But so that's subjective idealism, and it's an old philosophy. Surprisingly, it's from like late 1800s or late 1700s, early 1800s, I think, made up by an Irish guy. Oh, nothing's real. So that's kind of his high school and early years. Not a lot going on. He didn't have any like profound experiences that would make him into the Joe Rogan of the 1940s or whatever. Or I guess like 60s. At that point in his life, later on in his life, he does. So he enrolled in the California Institute of Technology after graduating high school, despite his father wanting him to be a banker with an Ivy League education like he was. So he's kind of being groomed. His father wanted him to be groomed to be like a banker, but he said, no, I'm going to be a scientist. So in college, he read Aldous Huxley's book Brave New World, which inspired Lilly to pursue neurophysiology. In Brave New World, I've heard people talk about this before on this other fucking podcast I listen to. That's also about run by insane people. I have no idea what it's about. I just kind of looked it up real quick, to be honest, because I was like kind of wondering. And it's a bunch of bullshit. It's about a futuristic world state with intelligence-based social hierarchy. So it seems like it's about like a dystopian world, like a typical dystopian book, where it's like a totalitarian government or something. But I'm guessing it has something to do with like programming people's minds, which is why John C. Lilly was interested in it. So he got engaged his junior year at Caltech, and he ended up marrying the girl. I didn't put that down because I didn't really care about all that. I cared more about what he was doing. But due to stress, Lilly became burnt out and decided to get a job logging. And in parentheses, I wrote rich kid shit because it's like he was very rich growing up. He probably never had a real job that his dad didn't get him or something. And so I was like, that's very like rich kid. I'm like, oh, school and being engaged is so hard. I'm just like getting pussy and like getting really good education in Southern California. Fucking, oh, I need to go be a lumberjack. Like, no, dude, you're living the vacation, not the other way around. But while being a lumberjack, he did injure his foot with an axe. Time in the trauma ward while recovering from that axe injury in the foot inspired him to become a medical doctor, just like a standard medical doctor. And so he would go on to enroll in Dartmouth, which I think is an Ivy League. He ends up going to a Ivy League, so his father's wishes were kind of fulfilled. But while in medical school, he did weird stuff dissecting bodies. What I read said he dissected 32 bodies. And it was just, he was so fucking gross, dude. Like, this guy lost his mind before he, lost his mind. He was already crazy to begin with, I think. He was, like, taking the guts out of him and shit. And, like, it said in one that he dissected the body and took the large intestine and, like, put it across the span of the room to see how big it really is. And that shit just creeped me the fuck out. You know what I mean? So yeah, he was weird, but and this is pretty important and kind of reveals what he would go on to be, or like what his how he would conduct his scientific, can't see it, but I did quotes there, experiments. And during his first summer break at Dartmouth, Lilly went back to Caltech to do research about how fuel for muscles is created. It was like with some professor he knew back then. And Lilly allowed the lead researcher, to do experiments on him that endangered himself. Right? He was like injecting him with like all these different things to see how like they combined in his muscles to become a certain type of fuel for the muscles. So, and that would be like something he would go on to do in all his further research, is like do it, do dangerous stuff himself, despite being like a researcher or whatever. He would volunteer to have his stuff done to him. So while uh, okay, I just accidentally skipped ahead there, but so Lilly changed his mind again, which is kind of goes on with the crazy rich kid shit, because it's like he's out here changing his mind every other day about what he wants to do, and he can just do it because he's fucking rich, which can be a dangerous combination if someone's crazy and rich. That's how you get like Mark Zuckerberg fucking reading everyone's data and shit and causing genocides in third world countries with Facebook and shit. But um but with Lilly, it was bad, but it wasn't that bad. But he changed his mind again and decided he wanted to be in the field of medical research instead of like direct um medical intervention. Fucking I don't know, like doctoring and shit. And so he enrolled at the University of Pennsylvania, which I know for a fact is an Ivy League. So he did eventually go to an Ivy League, but just for medical research, um, and not banking like his dad wanted him to. But I think medical, that's probably better. I feel like. I don't know. While at UPenn, he met a professor who introduced him to computers, and let's see, this is like the very beginning of computers as we know them today. This is like the most basic, like fucking caveman computers. Like these motherfuckers can't do addition on these things. I don't even know what a computer from back then could do. I know there was the like original computer, which was like to decode the Nazi messages in World War II or whatever. That's like the first one, but I have no idea what a computer from when John Lilly was in college looked like. They might have not done anything. It might have just been like a fucking box full of wires, which I guess is what all computers are, but you know what I mean. Another professor at UPenn introduced him to the idea that researchers should never do an experiment on someone else that they wouldn't do to themselves or like haven't already done to themselves in one way or another. Which he kind of already had that idea. So um I don't know how relevant that was, because it seems like he was already down that path. It's just that this guy um introduced him to that idea. And he would go on to take a class called How to Make Nuclear Bombs, and then write a book about how to make nuclear bombs. And they tried to get him in trouble, but they couldn't because it wasn't classified information. And I was also, I mean, I guess you don't want like other countries to read that book, but for the most part, the vast majority of people who are reading that book are going to be dorks and shit. So it's like, why bother getting him in trouble? And the information is clearly already public if a bunch of college students are learning it. So I think it was a fucking big to do over nothing. I don't think it was even a big to do, to be honest. I think they were just like, don't do that. And he nerded out like those people in those YouTube videos that are like, I'm a sovereign citizen. Check the code book in part 3. So technically you can't arrest me. I feel like that's what he did. Like, technically it's not illegal. But that's what he did in college. And he graduated UPenn in 1942. Yeah. So this guy was working with computers that didn't probably have any memory or storage or anything like that. Just straight fucking wires and shit. Just shit turning and turning. Alright. So that's kind of his early life and education and a little bit of what would go on to influence him later in his career, and his research and stuff. So now we're on to his career and his experiments. So Lilly worked as a physician and a psychoanalyst. He contributed to the fields of biophysics, neurophysiology, electronics, computer science, and neuroanatomy. Which sounds like a lot, but I feel like this was like the 50s and 60s when he was really in his height. And I feel like back then people didn't know shit. They didn't care about all this shit. He was like the only one doing research on it, which is probably why he has all like these inventions and stuff within those fields, because no one else gave a shit. They were like, oh yeah, neuroanatomy. Oh yeah, that's a real thing. They were still calling it like PTSD shell shock. Like a dude would like see his best friend get blown up, and everyone would just be like, "Oh yeah, he's a fucking pussy." People did not care about all this, which is probably why he was able to do so much. It wasn't a super competitive field. In some ways, it was for sure. Like the government was trying to figure out how to make like fucking clones and shit, like MK Ultra type stuff. But clones. What's the word I'm thinking of? Drones. They're trying to figure out how to turn people into drones and shit. But so it's kind of a brief overview of everything he did, which was a lot. He was a really smart dude. Crazy, but smart. The most important thing he did, I feel like this is kind of inarguable, was he invented the isolation tank. Which is, if you guys don't know what that is, this isn't in the notes, I just kind of already know. It's called a sensory deprivation tank, and that's kind of exactly what it sounds like. You float in a completely dark room in this pool of shallow water that's like, it matches the exact buoyancy of a human being. So it's not like you have to fight to stay above it, and it's not like it's like pushing on you or like irritating your skin because there's too much salt in it. It's like the perfect amount of salt. It's like the exact same temperature as your skin. So it doesn't even feel like you're in anything. It just feels like almost like you're floating in space in complete darkness. And people usually wear earplugs for a couple reasons. It's to make sure they don't get any of the salt water in their ears and like interrupt the experience, and also so that they don't so that they can't hear anything, so that all their senses are truly deprived, like they're barely seeing or feeling anything. I was just thinking, but float. He invented them while working for the National Institute of Mental Health, NIMH, in 1954. So he was at the forefront of this shit. That's only 12 years after he graduated. I guess he was almost like 40. Still, that's a pretty sick invention for being like one of his first. He invented a bunch of other things. I think I have some of it down here. I have the other most important one that he invented that's not like super niche or anything. But float tanks are intended to help you become more focused on your mind and body and may reduce stress. And that's the reason John Lilly invented them, was to reduce stress. He was working for the National Institute of Mental Health, which I'm surprised they had that in 1954. But that was probably for like, in 1954, they were probably like, how do we make these broads stop freaking out over everything? I hit my wife one time and she gets all mad at me. So that's probably what they were focused on the fucking National Institute of Mental Health in 1954. And I have another fun fact about flotation tanks. Float tanks. I should have just written sensory deprivation, but um, during the lead up to Super Bowl 49, the Seahawks and the Patriots both rented out this huge, it's called a float spa, and for like 2 or 3 weeks, and a lot of them did it. It's probably why they ended up fucking passing the ball there instead of running it, because like that stuff. If anyone's seen that Atlanta episode, they know it can like mess with your mind and stuff if you're in there for too long. So I think Pete Carroll spent a few too many minutes in the fucking float tank, went a little bonkers, and decided to pass the ball instead of running. But anyway, that's just a dumb thought I had. But um, a float tank, an hour is anywhere from $75 to $100 on a good one. And I think at this time John C. Lilly was living in San Francisco. I could look that up, but I don't want to because I don't really care. And these were expensive too. It was like $10,000 in the 1960s for one of these, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but I don't fucking know that much about the technology that goes into making them, so who am I to say? I just know in Stranger Things they made one with a fucking baby pool and some road salt, so how can it cost $10,000? But anyway, on to the fucking next invention. And this is the only other invention I'm going to talk about, but I think it's really cool. In 1951, he published a paper showing he could display patterns of electrical brain activity on a cathode ray tube display, which if you know anything about like TVs and stuff, cathode ray tube is what old TVs were made out of, those big old boxes with the trapezoid on the back, the long trapezoid, that's the cathode ray tube display. And so he invented something that could do that, but I think they had to put something in the actual brain, so I don't know how useful it was, but for the 1950s, that was pretty fucking advanced technology. They were still doing lobotomies and shit constantly back then, so I feel like that was a banger. He came up with a banger with that one. But this is kind of where we start to go off the deep end a little bit. Alright, we got the float tank, which is a little weird, but it's useful, it works. And then we got this other thing, I don't know what it's called, but the thing that shows electrical brain activity, that's actually really useful. Probably unbeknownst to most common people, it's probably more useful than we think it is. But this is where we kind of start to get into fucking wacko territory and how that dolphin ends up doing, or what happens to that dolphin, how that ends up. So, in 1961, he and fellow scientists used the Drake equation to estimate the number of communicative civilizations in our galaxy, and it's a very simple equation. I might look it up real quick just to say it out loud, if I can. But it's like a super simple equation it's kind of nonsense, and it's also like, how did you get these numbers? You know what I mean? But it's the number of civilizations with which okay, so that's what we're trying to get to. And then we have R is the mean rate of star formation, FP, the fraction of stars that have planets, NE, the number of planets that could support life per star with planets, FL, the fraction of life-supporting planets that develop life, FI, the fraction of planets with life where life develops intelligence, FC, the fraction of intelligent civilizations that develop communication, and L, the mean length of time that civilizations can communicate. So it's kind of nonsense, to be fucking honest with you. It doesn't, like, the first probably 4 variables in there, okay, like, you could convince me that that's real, but the rest, it kind of seems like bullshit. like you're kind of only basing that off one number, which is Earth. You know what I mean? That's the only planet that at least us common folk know has intelligent life. So that's kind of the first crazy thing he does. But throughout his adult life and experimentation, he explored human consciousness through LSD and meditation. He claimed to reach the highest level of Buddhist spiritual liberation / awakening, which is bullshit. He didn't do that. If he did, he wouldn't be doing all this other retarded bullshit and then like bragging about it to everyone else. And also, it's like even within those Buddhist communities, it like takes a whole lifetime to achieve that. So this fucker didn't do it. He didn't even do it in like India or like Tibet or some shit. He did it in fucking like Argentina or something. It's like, okay, yeah, dude, I believe you. Um, um, so yeah, that's kind of how he probably went crazy is by doing LSD and then sitting in a float tank. Like I did a gram of mushrooms and I was like, I don't think I would ever recover from that. So if you do LSD multiple times while sitting in float tanks and shit, like, yeah, dude, I can see how he would would try to come up with an equation to guess how much intelligent life is out there and stuff. Um, yeah, and this next fucking bullet point starts with went a little bit crazy and started talking about some evil, intelligent creature that humans will accidentally create with all of our interconnected technology. It's called the what's it called? It's called like the super solid intelligence. Um, yeah, and he believed that like all of our interconnected networks and technology of like I don't think they definitely didn't have the internet back then, but I think it was just about like electrical cables and stuff. It would somehow become intelligent and become evil, and it would clash with human intelligence because um, I don't know why it would try to fight us, but it would probably win because it doesn't need like all this like water and like all the shit humans need to survive. Yeah, I just had to take a pause there because of how fucking absurd that is. Like whenever anyone starts to have ideas like that, it's like okay, you know they've gone crazy. If someone's like doing math to figure out how much, you know, if there's any intelligent life out there, okay, that's math. But this dude is just like woke up from a fucking acid nap, woke up in a float tank, and he's like, fucking, look, the phone's gonna be evil. Which is kind of like that movie G-Force, if you've seen that. So this guy basically became schizophrenic and thought of the movie G-Force in like 1960 or whatever. So good on him, I guess. I don't know. He didn't really do anything too bad, except for that goddamn dolphin, dude. Wait till we get to this dolphin. I think it's yeah, getting to the dolphin soon. But another thing that he believed in was a series of coincidence and control centers in offices that all intelligent life was linked to and worked for. So there was like the Earth Coincidence Control Center and like the Galactic Coincidence Control Office. I was like reading that and I was thinking like maybe he's just only trying. These ideas might not be too fucking insane because it's like if you're Christian or really any other religion, you believe that there's something out there that has like a plan for us or something. So maybe he just didn't use the right words to describe those things, so it sounded like he thought that there's like some kind of like basic like human level intelligent thing that was controlling everything when in reality he thought something else. And Mike died again. God damn. I feel like I was kind of in my bag with that one. Or not in my bag, but I was doing a decent job of like explaining what I thought about this, and I completely just fucked now. So if you're wondering why there's a little silence, no one's wondering this. But yeah, so I was just wondering if he was just calling them offices and control centers instead of like another word because he didn't like have that word to describe it. You know what I mean? It's like when people call God him, even though obviously God's not a fucking dude, like a human male. I was wondering if it was kind of like that, maybe. Like when he called it a control center, maybe that's like God or something, or like some sort of intelligence that's beyond our comprehension. Or maybe he really was fucking that crazy. Very well could have been. And this is kind of the end of the overview of him. He did a lot more stuff, and a lot of his stuff was, I mean, it was pretty good. Like that video I talked about last week called Cogitate. I'll try to put a link to it in the description of this episode if I remember to do that. But and in that video he talks about how humans, we always get stuck in these cycles. And this is like in the 1960s and stuff. So he was pretty ahead of the curve. Because like now psychologists talk about how people get in self-destructive cycles and shit. And he was talking about that way back when. Um, so yeah, that's kind of the end of the overview. Now we get to the fun part, the moment you've all been waiting for. Maybe you already know what happened with that dolphin. You probably definitely don't know the whole story. You definitely don't know how that dolphin ended up. But maybe you do know about the dolphin and the lady and what that lady did to that dolphin. And what apparently a lot of other people did to dolphins when I was researching this episode. People can't leave these goddamn dolphins alone, dude. I don't get it. You know, I see a dolphin and that's a fish, dude. It's a fish. You know what I mean? Um, it's not a fish, but you guys know what I'm saying. Like, disgusting. All right, now we're on to the dolphin experiment. In the late 1960s, Lilly began working. I wrote with. John Lilly was working with NASA. No, he was working with NASA and the U.S. Navy on a project centered around speaking to extraterrestrial life forms. And to simulate this, Lilly would attempt to communicate with dolphins. He was trying to teach these dolphins English. A dolphin can never speak English. This guy was so, I mean, out of his mind. He was trying to teach a dolphin English. He did later on, I think, try to like use a computer synthesized language that was like equally communicable between like dolphins and humans. Like it had all the sounds that dolphins could make and all the sounds humans could make. So, I mean, that's a good idea if you're trying to talk to dolphins. And dolphins, I mean, if you guys know, I'll probably end up doing an episode about cetaceans and like cetacean intelligence. Um, but um, dolphins are not the smartest of them, but it's not like you can like get a fucking whale and like try to talk to a whale. I guess you could, but you'd have to like follow it around on a boat and shit. Like you can't trap a whale in a pool. Um, like you can a dolphin, like he did with the dolphin. So yeah. And also, if you don't believe in aliens, I feel like this shit should make you believe in aliens. But then again, the government does waste a lot of money on a lot of stupid shit. But I feel like I don't know. This was like the early '60s. I think they were more focused on getting to space. You know what I mean? I think it was like half of the U.S. GDP was spent trying to get to space or something, or like half of our tax dollars. reused on like the space program. I don't know, maybe they thought they were gonna find aliens on the moon and have to talk to them, and they were like, fucking hire this schizophrenic dude to talk to dolphins, so that we can talk to these fucking moon aliens when we beat the Soviets up there. But I don't know. So this started in Coconut Grove, Florida, but moved to St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands, where like Lilly owned like a house and some land and stuff, and it was like a house slash lab. And I think another reason he moved there is because um the dolphins were being kept in like inhumane conditions in Coconut Grove, Florida. Like they were in like these super small tanks and shit. So he was like, "We need to move him here." Which, if after the rest of the story, you'll be like, he probably didn't believe that. He was probably just trying to get the fuck out of Coconut Grove. He probably just wanted to go chill at his old place where he had his acid and his flotation tanks and stuff. But um, so they move it to St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands. I'm gonna try not to go off on any dumb tangents like that for the rest of this story. It's a pretty crazy story, but Lilly had part of a house slash lab flooded in order to create the ideal space for human slash dolphin cohabitation. And I don't have this written down, I just know this, but it wasn't. It was like a flooded house, which I imagine sucks if you're a dolphin because you're like, you're probably just confused. You're not used to like corners and stairs and shit. But these were dolphins from a like a private zoo, so they probably aren't used to too much of the wild. Um, but it sucked for the human too. Like she was sleeping in like she was surrounded by water on like all sides on her bed, and so she'd wake up soaking wet every fucking day. This is in the Virgin Islands too. She was probably human. She probably had monkey ass of the fucking century, dude. She probably had insane chub rub between her thighs. So suffice it to say, this wasn't nice for either of the people. And there was like an upstairs and a downstairs pool area that was flooded, and they couldn't really move the dolphins. It was like a big to do to move the dolphins between them. So it kind of sucked for everyone involved. And this dude lived. It was like a house, right? So they flooded, I think, like the bottom level and then like another level, and I think it connected to the ocean, um, in some way or another. Uh, but this dude lived above them, and he was like recording it and taking notes and stuff. But he was also like doing acid or like going in a float tank to provide conscious support to this lady, which is such like a funny thing to do. This guy was out of his goddamn mind. Um, I mean, to be fair, I think he like isolated himself and like it wasn't a super nice room, so at least he was living the shitty life too. And if you listen to like some of like the recordings, they're so fun. It's just this lady like I don't know if anyone else like did this when they were a kid, but when I was a kid, I watched like a video of a dog talking or like a bird. I had a pet bird. It was like a cockatiel, and I don't think those guys talk. I think that's like big bird shit, like parrots and stuff. And I guess it's not like a real parrot. And I just like, I was like, I'm gonna teach this fucker how to talk, dude. Polly's gonna be asking for crackers. And I like spent like hours like just talking to this bird saying, I was like, I don't remember what I was trying to teach it how to say, but that's what they did to these dolphins. This lady, her name was Margaret, I think. And if you listen to the recordings, it's just like hours of her being like, say hello, Margaret, hello, just saying it to this dolphin. He doesn't even get close, but you hear it like convince herself that he got close. She's like, oh my god, there it is. And it's like, no, it's not there. This dolphin, you'll figure out what this dolphin was trying to do to this lady, dude. Why he was sticking around. Um, so, yeah. There was three dolphins and one woman attempting to teach them English, or like how to say some words in English. I feel like they did have some level of communication, but it wasn't like language like verbal language. It was like physical language. Um, but anyway, if you know anything about John Lilly and his experiments and stuff, you know this. One of the dolphins was a young male with strong reproductive urges. And to soothe these urges, I just wrote it. I was like trying to like find a way to write it that was like reproductive urges, but the lady whacked the dolphin off. Fucking yeah. And I don't have this written down either, but and one of the quotes is like, it wasn't sexual at all, but it was sensual. And I just like read that and started laughing so hard that it's like the floor isn't down, it's beneath me. It's like, yo, lady, you wanted to fuck this dolphin. So yeah, the dolphin didn't learn anything. He got whacked off a whole, but which is kind of the life, dude. You're just a dolphin. You don't do anything all day. You get fish and get whacked off like every once in a while. That dolphin was kind of living the life. You'll figure out later. Dolphin is no longer living the life. That's actually kind of the next sentence. Because I already went over how they didn't learn anything from that experiment. How the experiments would go on to change and stuff. But the dolphin would eventually be used for LSD research and commit suicide. And the lady continued to live in the home and raise a family. Dude. Oh my god. So Lilly moved all three of these dolphins to Miami, and they lived in like these horrible conditions. Like people talk about how SeaWorld is bad. This was like way worse than that. Like objectively, like not. You look at it and you're like, yeah, damn, dude. You want to put like a fish in there. You know what I mean? Like even a fish in there is like inhumane, let alone a dolphin. And they were just feeding these dolphins LSD. I think it said it was in a bank building in Miami. So it was like a completely dark building. It's a dolphin in this tiny tank, and they were feeding it LSD constantly, and it just killed itself. And then the lady would go on to live in that home that was partially flooded. I guess they unflooded it, and she lived there and raised a family. And one of the people she married was a photographer that was like photographing the experiment and stuff. So that guy's a fucking family full of weirdos, dude. Those kids are definitely. It's not like horse girls. It's like dolphin girls. Like horse girls like run around like a horse. Dolphin girls like lay on the ground and just spaz around and that's um. But yeah, dude. Sad ending for the dolphin. Good ending for the lady, dude. Shout out to Peter the dolphin. Fuck these hoes. Um, yeah. And then I just have one last line. Lilly moved to Maui and died in 2001. He somehow died in Los Angeles, but I think he spent the rest of his days in Maui taking acid and trying to talk to whales and dolphins and stuff. So that concludes this story for the most part. I was going to talk about Cetacean Nation, which is something he started, but it was basically John Lilly. He started this thing basically advocating that cetaceans are so intelligent that they should have a spot in the UN, and that should be represented by the Maoris of New Zealand, because apparently they're fucking with the dolphins heavy. But I just thought that was funny because like, how smart do you think dolphins are if you're putting them in cages and feeding them LSD in the dark? Like, I don't know, maybe he did that to people, but he probably didn't. So yeah, that kind of concludes this episode. Um, this episode wasn't a great second topic, but I mean, these are all kind of test episodes, so I might as well try out something new. I didn't really know anything about him, besides the whole Cogitate thing, which, now that I have it, I'll remember to link it. I'll also, I think I'll link the Instagram in this episode, or maybe I'll just put it in the bio. I'll probably end up doing that, but, um, yeah, that's episode 2. Next week, the topic will probably be a better episode. It'll definitely be a better episode. But um, yeah, that was this week's episode. Next one, if you want a sneak peek, it's about a war. It's a war, going over a war episode. Um, and I'll say this: some people refer to it as Britain's Vietnam. So, I mean, yeah, stay tuned for that one. Should be pretty interesting. And it's a topic I know a whole lot more about. Um, yeah, thanks for listening. What's up? The 2 dudes who I know are listening to this, you're probably not listening up to this point. If you are, shout out, I guess. But yeah, I'm done with this episode, and I will see you guys next week. Peace.